SullivanCurtisMonroe for inviting me in here to present to Craig and John, who's with us. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be giving some information, some tips that you guys can bring back to your organizations that will be helpful in helping you guys mitigate claims or deal with employee issues in your practice. So first off, just a little bit about me, just so you guys get a context. Craig gave a kind of a context early on, you know, licensed private investigator, served as an expert witness, and I have I'm a certified private investigator. I have a show on YouTube called the Ask a Private Investigator Show, where we answer questions that our clients are constantly asking us. And our firm really is specializing in workers' comp claims investigations going back to 1975. So I have a breadth of experience and knowledge in different industries and different issues that arise. And like I said, my goal is to give you guys one or two pieces of information you can bring back to your companies so that give some value to your organizations. The first group here, the first two sections, we're talking about risk avoidance, right? What things can we do in our businesses to avoid potential claims, exposure, and losses? And then in the final few sections, we're going to talk about what happens after the claim of the loss, what can be done to prevent, mitigate exposure, and deal with those things. So I put these slides up here not because they're funny, but oftentimes these things do happen. So like I said, we're going to talk first off about risk avoidance and how to deal with these issues that occur and how to recognize these things. Right? In our businesses, we face all different types of risk, and these things do happen without awareness and training. I would say that when it comes to background checks, why do we do them, right? There's two things we're going to talk about in the risk avoidance. One has to do with the risk factor that employees pose, and then other outside factors that can creep into our business. So these are kind of the basics on what's going on, right? This is what's happening out there. So why are background checks important? The statistics kind of tell us that story, right? Some of these numbers could seem quite alarming, but they're out there. This is what's happening in the workplace. So what we say is that implementing a background screening process is kind of the first step in that risk mitigation or risk avoidance practice. Secondly is the ever increasing issues that workplace violence causes in our work today. So we talk about numbers, right? These statistics are staggering in terms of the costs. One thing that they don't talk about is the actual stress level, production level of the actual employees that are affected by these types of things that can happen in the operation, right? We're talking about hard costs, we're talking about insurance costs, and we're also talking about loss of production, which are serious. And so the work claims and the actual violence in the workplace, the background checks is a tool that we can use to help mitigate that exposure from the onset when we're hiring people. The process of actually implementing the background screening system or hiring process is great because it gives you a chance to actually see what the potential employees are going to look like before they're working with you. Can they follow direction, attention to detail? Are they familiar with deadlines and different protocols that are out there before they get involved? What most often happens is that, you know, this process that we're talking about, there's a few things that's going to help us to deal with, right? Which is reducing the workplace violence that we talked about previously. It's going to protect you against negligent hiring practices if you're doing it in a compliant way using a certified provider that understands FCRA rules and different protocols. You're going to also potentially meet insurance requirements if you have cyber insurance or other types of insurance that requires that, and hopefully giving your broker leverage to negotiate on your behalf to go to the carrier and say, look, we have a hiring process that includes this, which helps mitigate claims and risk. Also, achieve compliance with your customers, right? A lot of our clients have master service agreements that require background screening as part of that, right? And that could be with customers, with clients. It could be as part of a cyber policy. There could be something in there as well where background screening is a requirement. And also, what we found is that by having background screening process in place, you can actually look at mitigating kind of exposures and losses, internal theft, external theft, other things that can occur by having dishonest employees, right? That can lead to other things. So we talk about what does a background check entail, and there's a lot of different things out there, but this is typically what we see most people conducting as part of their background screening. And that's kind of a basic level. Credit checks is more of it for advanced accounting positions and people that have access to cash. But it's kind of a basic starting point for your kind of basic person. And this will kind of give you a snapshot of who you're dealing with. The last two, the reason that those are up there is, I guess the number one question that we get is, hey, look, we want to hire someone, but we're really concerned that there's a pre-existing workers' comp claim or there's a pre-existing injury that could impact us in our production, and we could have exposure if we hire the person and they file a claim. And so can we screen out workers' comp claims as part of the background screening process? And this is probably the number one question that we get once we see lingering claims, potential fraud, and other issues. What we're talking about here is that you can conduct searches to determine if there's existing workers' comp claims. But just keep in mind that these workers' comp claims that we're talking about are litigated claims. These are claims that went through the WCAB and they've been litigated. Those are the ones that can be searched. So in that respect, you want to be careful of that. Also, doing a workers' comp claim search without conducting substance abuse and or pre-placement physicals can expose you to risks, discrimination, ADA issues. So what we recommend is if you're going to do the workers' comp search, which is going to look for those litigated claims, you want to also look at those other two pieces. And the pre-placement physicals is crucial because you want to work with the clinic that can actually help you to determine if the job description that the person's being hired for, can they meet the duties of the job physically or otherwise, and that will help further uncover information to suggest there may be a pre-existing injury or condition before you bring them into your workforce. So this is mitigation of risk with regard to employees, right? But I think that one thing that a lot of our clients fail to recognize is our extended workforce. So who are they, right? Who is our extended workforce? These are your suppliers, your vendors, your consultants, anyone that's touching your premises, your network, your clients, your customers, and it can impact all those areas of your business, okay? So why do they pose a risk? Most recently, you guys are probably, everyone aware of the Target breach that occurred where a lot of client information was stolen. All that was simply as a result of an HVAC vendor that they were working with that someone exploited and used that as a whole into their database of information and exposed all of those client records, okay? And the reason is because our intellectual property, our trade secrets, our business processes that we hold dear in our businesses become exposed when you have these outside people accessing them. And especially with technology today, giving access to network and files and servers exposes you to all of that kind of information. Additionally, we're talking about credit card information with PCI compliance, which is really, really important, as well as personally identifying information of your clients and your customers. And when those breaches occur, the costs are significant. So the question is, what can you do to protect yourself? So the same types of background screening that you can do on employees, you can do on your potential vendors and partners. Sometimes they're referred to as a due diligence background investigation, and this is on potential companies and executives or owners of those companies. And the difference is that you're looking for information about the company as opposed to individuals. This can include like a business credit profile, you're looking at UCC filings, litigation, bad press search. The worst thing is to go into business with somebody and then find out that there's a white collar crime lawsuit pending, or there's some bad press about how they were involved in trafficking of something. I also want to point out that a lot of our clients, anyway, that have government contracts or dealing work with customers, they have a requirement that says that they must screen anyone that's working on those projects because of the protected information and the access that they will have to potentially social security numbers or other information, especially when you're talking about HIPAA, PCI, and high-tech compliance, where these are regulated things where there's a requirement that anyone that's touching the data is protecting it and is not jeopardizing the agency or the company they're working for. It's also kind of a situation where it's a marketing tactic to say, look, we not only screen our employees, but our vendors and our partners. It's a way to strengthen the bond with customers and a way to advertise that you're safer with us, especially in light of the recent issues and breaches that have occurred that have been so public and so nasty, if you will. So we're still talking about risk avoidance here. Now we're going to move into what we talk about is response awareness and what to do. You guys are probably all aware that it comes down to training and really creating an environment where there's a culture and that people understand what to do when certain things occur. So what we find is that if people are trained on how to respond to, report, and act on losses or potential losses, claims, or even just an insignificant injury can be substantial. There's a few ways to do that. There's programs that are available in training. What we found too is that by bringing in consultants and other investigators and presenting to the employees on the benefit or how their benefits and how their compensation, how the business suffers when these claims arise, they actually understand that hiring an attorney to litigate a claim impacts not just them but the whole business, and it's really, they're no better off. It really helps that. We found that that's a significant way to not necessarily scare the employees, but to have them understand that all these claims are serious, they'll be investigated to the maximum, and that there's an impact across the company. I want to share this kind of statistic right here because just shows that it doesn't have to be a catastrophic. We're talking about a minor strain injury, whether this is a warehouse injury or this is a catastrophic auto accident. This is just a strain, and it talks about the delays and what that costs in terms of dollars. It's just staggering, right? So by just being preventative and looking at first aid measures and other ways to deal with those claims can be significant. And I would say that the third thing is protect and preserve. When I'm talking about protect and preserve, what I'm referring to is that protecting and preserving information as a result of an accident or loss. This could be security camera footage, it could be photographs, it could be the machinery that caused the incident, meaning keep that area roped off and don't let anyone access it until it can be investigated further. It could be just pretty much documenting who was present or not present. And also at that time, creating a witness list and looking at if there are documents, training certificates, material safety data sheets that impact that loss. Where are they? Let's preserve them. Let's make sure we're ready, because whether it's OSHA that's coming in or an investigator that's coming in or an insurance company that's coming in, we want to make sure we kind of have all of our ducks in a row. And just by having that stuff ready puts you really, really ahead of the game. And I would say that one simple thing that we find is that a lot of companies that we work with have security cameras and they have footage and they have whatever else, but they don't maintain them, they don't keep them backed up, and they don't keep them operational. And the simple fact of proving negligence in a case could be the fact that that video is there, because maybe we don't have a witness, maybe we don't have an employee who's willing to come forward. So important. So I reiterate that just because I see that it's so impactful and it can be so useful. The video tells the whole story. I want to now move into kind of the juicy stuff that kind of everyone associates with an investigation firm, which is investigating those fraudulent claims. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the strategy, and then we'll get into more specific case information a little bit later on. So document early, I referred to it. Obtain interviews, statements of witnesses to the accident. Get a statement from the injured worker. When possible, one thing that we find, whether it's the employer or whoever's doing the investigation, get a pain diagram from the employee that's injured, stating what specifically has been injured. That could be super useful later on when we're talking about them adding other body parts. Well, wait a minute, you added a neck injury and you said it was a foot. Look, we have this pain diagram. You never indicated there's anything about your neck. Very, very useful. And not to say that they can't change their statements and the information going on, but very, very useful. And also, sometimes, obviously, these losses that occur in the workplace are not the result of negligence on behalf of your company. It could be the negligence of somebody else. So if that's possible, we're looking at a subrogation situation where we want to determine that the party that caused the loss is not the employee. How do we document that? Determining who owns the machine, who maintains the machine, who services the machine. All those types of pieces can be very useful to go to the insurance company and say, okay, look, this isn't ours, this is a result of somebody else. And that's just one example. It could be other related issues in a business park where there's potentially violence and so forth, and there should be security provided by the park, and the injured worker is maybe mugged or held up, or there's an assault. So those things are super, super important. I think too that there's an investigation, a type of investigation that we often conduct referred to as an AOE COE investigation, which really just determines if the accident determined in the course and scope of employment. A lot of times it's very clear that it wasn't, but documenting that by a third party or through something formal is super, super important, so that you could say, look, they're not working this day, look, they requested this day off, or look, they weren't coming and going from work, or they weren't responsible for doing these types of activities and they were told not to. Those types of pieces of information are super, super important. What can be done if there's potential fraud? So what we talk about is a claimant or plaintiff profile. Just basically speaking, what is it that we can find out about the person that would indicate to us there's potential signs of fraud, or that maybe they're employed elsewhere, or their activities and their restrictions are beyond what the doctor's telling us. Very basically, that could involve running a driving record, looking for non-industrial auto accidents that occurred prior to loss date. That could be looking at civil and criminal litigation just to find out credibility of that actual claimant or plaintiff in your case. Again, we're talking about social media. If there's activity there that's showing that they're active beyond their, preserve that information, save it, and then track it and find out what they're up to, so that when we look at other investigative techniques, we kind of know where the person's at and what their profile looks like before they hire that attorney and then remove all that information. So it's one thing to find it, it's more important to preserve it, because once they do hire counsel, they'll be advised, do not post and potentially delete that information. Some of them can't help themselves, but still, It's a recommended practice. For us, what we find is that a lot of employers are so frustrated. I know they're employed elsewhere. Okay, if we know that they're employed elsewhere, let's figure that out, where they're at, and document it. And we can, of course, do surveillance, but there's other discreet ways to do that. Discreet phone calls, spot checks, and things like that to determine that. Let the carrier know, let counsel know, let somebody know that this is going on, and that's a great way for them to get involved and potentially stop benefits or look at potential signs of fraud. I put this infographic up just because I think that we all are keen to what kind of red flags can come up. But obviously, if there's no witness to an accident, I got hurt playing soccer over the weekend. I come back to work on Monday, and now I'm going to seek treatment. Those things, document those things. Repeat offender, they've had 2-3 claims where they've been treated for, and now all of a sudden it's gone to a 4th. Those post-termination claims, which we all know about. And I guess this one is super, super important down here at the bottom. If someone's truly injured, they're going to treat. They're going to go to seek treatment. And they're going to go and they're going to find out the doctors are going to be reporting. Okay, one of the things is they're stop treating. One is make sure that the doctor stopped billing, for one. And two, why did they stop treating? So many times we get called in after the fact to do surveillance from a medical appointment. And we go and they don't show. We go and they don't show. And so now we're spending time and money to schedule those appointments, follow them, and then they don't show up. So sometimes it's a last resort. If you don't know where the person lives, it's a good way to follow them to where they may be living or working. But just some quick red flag signs there. All right. So now we're going to go into a couple case studies of different people just to kind of give a sense of what we would recommend if different situations arise. We're going to look at Dirty Harry here real quick. With this type of a profile, there's be a different strategy as to what should be done in this situation. In this case, if we think he has a side job, looking to make discrete calls to find out and see if we can confirm that would be super useful, right? He moves around a lot, so we need to verify where he's living so we can determine if we can set up surveillance and follow him to and document where he's working. If he does in fact have multiple workers' comp claims, now that they're already in the employee and we're looking at potential fraud or claim situation, we have different tools that we can look at to determine if there's other claims out there at a higher level beyond kind of a workers' comp EDEX type of litigated claim search, and see if there's pre-existing medical conditions across other areas of insurance, not just workers' comp. Okay, so with this Dirty Harry, that's kind of a recommendation based on this information, these signs that present at a very basic level. So this is Slick Sally right here. With her, you have problem employees and you want to get rid of them, of course, but the good news is she's leaving a trail. Preservation of social media would be very, very useful. But lives with mom and dad, her checks are going to mom and dad, we need to find out where she's at. So as an investigator, we may say, look, we want to find out on social media who she's interacting with, who her boyfriend is, so we can find out where he lives and then conduct surveillance from that location and get evidence of what we're trying to prove, which is activities, employment, and other things. Stress claims are difficult to deal with, but if there's a pre-existing condition that's out there, this is where those interviews and statements that we obtain from the employees at the time of the alleged claim or the reporting of that claim or loss are useful. These employees are saying, look, Sam, he's got family issues, potential substance abuse, he's got problems at home, his kids are causing issues. These are non-industrial things that are causing issues that could affect his industrial claim. So in that type of a situation, a couple things to think about are looking at civil, criminal, and family law type of cases to determine if in fact there are restraining orders, criminal cases, and other things that are out there that could be used against this person and impact the credibility, if you will, of this claimant, and to substantiate that, to prove that the actual injury was not a result of work-related issues or exposure or harassment by a supervisor. It was actually, in fact, a result of a family issue, stress, and other issues, substance abuse, and so forth. So now we're just going to talk about kind of the tools that are out there. And one thing to point out, too, is that the pre-employment background screening phase of things, we must be very transparent. We have to have authorization from the employee or the applicant to conduct the background. They're entitled to a consumer copy, and we must follow very kind of, there's a very regimented compliance in that process. Now we're into a claim situation, potential litigation situation. Those rules are no longer apply. These types of investigations can be conducted in discreet, no authority required, and well, they should be done discreetly, not to say that they're always done that way, but in a very, and the tool set can be kind of expanded because we have more information to look at and we don't have to report it back to the employee. So while we wouldn't do a social media investigation typically in a pre-employment background check unless there's certain requirements, in this situation we could and we can use that evidence. We would look at EDEX and potentially ISO or other claim searches. We would look at licensing and business affiliations to find out not only employed elsewhere, but they have in their business, because maybe they've set up a side business while they were working for your company, and then they just migrated out, filed the claim, and now they're running that other business full time. So there's other things that are available to us to search. The most important thing, obviously, when you're conducting that surveillance or SUPROSA is the fact that you're discreet about it. You want to make sure you're using a partner that is very discreet about it, is not tipping off this claimant or this plaintiff as to what's going on, because as soon as that person gets burned, the opportunity to get useful surveillance is going to be gone for a good period of time, right? Or they're going to limit their activities or be more aware, and making that surveillance effort a lot more challenging. In terms of surveillance efforts, the best way to get results is to come up with a solid strategy. If you want to if you know the person's on modified duty and you hear that they're playing baseball, softball, soccer on the weekends, set up the surveillance for the weekends or non-work hours. Don't let them conduct surveillance during the week, because we know the person is going to be followed to work and be working part-time. We're not going to optimize our chances. If we know they're off TTD, they can't work, they're on total restrictions, and we want to get them working, and we know they're in construction, set up 5 a.m. at their house. Make sure we document what's going on and make sure we don't miss them going to work, because that's the profile of that type of person, and that's the kind of job they would handle. If it's somebody that we're trying to document, obviously, other types of potential statements that are made by employees and other information is developed, create that plan. Make sure you're verifying, not just going to the address where the checks are mailed, but verify the address where that claimant or plaintiff is living before you conduct that surveillance, because you don't want to spend 4, 8, or 2 days of work at an address that's wrong to find out the person doesn't live there. Also, surveillance can be used as a tool to determine that maybe that the fraud that you thought was happening is not the case. The investigator you're working with should be able to tell you within a couple of days, 2 to 3 days, what's going on. It's not acceptable to get a report back that says, I went out on Monday, went out on Wednesday, went out on Saturday, no activity. You need to have something. You got to have something. Yeah, he lives there. Neighbors say that he comes and goes. He doesn't walk with a limp, even though he's supposed to be in a cast. Or, oh yeah, he does live there. He told me that he's off work because he hurt his leg. I saw him on crutches. Okay, that's something tangible, and then we can determine next steps and plan for what's going on. That's tangible information to make a decision, but we can't live with, oh, I'm not sure if he lives there. I'm not sure what he's up to, and we spent 2, 3, 4 days of surveillance, okay? This right here is just Twitter. This is a Twitter feed, but Twitter has an advanced search. So this is a Twitter advanced search. If you go to twitter.com/advanced-search, this is a case where we're looking for witnesses to a significant auto accident. And so this right here, like, okay, this is someone who actually saw this, who maybe didn't stop. Example right here. Some people, are really egregious about what they write on social media. About to get a slip and fall and settle out of court for real money, easy money, right? Not the sharpest tools in the shed there. And this lady, or this person right here, I'm not sure if it's a lady, recheck workers' comp doctor, see if he's going to increase my work hours, right? That's useful information that we want to track and follow. And this is a very basic tool. So it's not necessarily, the tools are out there, there's a million of them to use. It's knowing how to use them, where to look, to get the information you're looking for. This wasn't a search, obviously the person's name, I don't know what the person's real name is, but this was based on a search of particular information about what we're looking to find. So again, thanks for having me, I really appreciate it. And if you're more comfortable connecting with me, there's a slide here with my info.